Hello and welcome. I'm Jono Hayes and you're watching W News, broadcasting live from the Arabiya studios. These are our top stories. More than 100 aid groups say mass starvation is spreading in Gaza, accusing Israel of blocking access to critical food and supplies. Russia and Ukraine head to Istanbul for their first peace talks in weeks, amid new battlefield losses and growing concerns over Kiev's anti-corruption rollback. And Obama calls Trump's treason claims a weak attempt at distraction from the Epstein files backlash. First, let's take a look at some of the other stories making the headlines today. A man has been charged with 37 counts of attempted murder, including assault with a deadly weapon, after being accused of driving into a crowd in Los Angeles. 29-year-old Fernando Ramirez is currently being held without bail, according to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. If convicted, he would face multiple life sentences in prison. The ramming happened over the weekend outside a nightclub and injured dozens of people. In New York, the prestigious Columbia University is punishing 80 people over anti-Israeli protests. The campus demonstrations date back to May, where a library sit-in took place, as well as an encampment in 2024. The punishments for this include expulsion or revoking of degrees and comes amid negotiations with the Trump administration over federal funding. Over to Europe now, where French President Emmanuel Macron is meeting the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz in Berlin to discuss NATO security, the war in Ukraine, and the trade dispute with the US. The French presidency say that the Franco-German partnership is back in action after former President Trump's strained transatlantic relations. And finally, the showbiz world is paying tribute to Ozzy Osbourne, the frontman of the heavy metal group Black Sabbath, who died at the age of 76. His death comes only a week after a sold-out farewell concert in his home city of Birmingham in the UK. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in 2019. European Union officials Ursula von der Leyen and Antonio Costa are due to meet with the Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing on Thursday. The EU has widened a trade deficit with China and is worried that Chinese exports, such as electric vehicles, are harming European firms. Camille Nedelec is in Hong Kong with this story.
China's move to electric vehicles is in the fast lane, and that's in part thanks to places like this, free, fast charging stations, always within easy reach.
I'm here to charge my car. I choose this place because it's close to my house, and this is a fast charging station. It only needs about an hour to be fully charged.
Almost 65% of the world's electric vehicle charging capacity is in China. Europe is a distant second. And along with that, China's EV sales have soared. Last year, almost 2/3 of electric cars sold globally were Chinese-made.
Chinese EVs hit the sweet spot. Smart tech, great range, and sleek interiors at half the price of Western brands.
That competitiveness is thanks to a huge green transition drive by Beijing. Chinese automakers have advantages that European firms just don't have. Much of the supply chain is already in China, and there are state subsidies every step of the way. It's thanks to that support that the Chinese EV transition is in overdrive. Chinese manufacturers are caught in a race to the bottom to hit sales targets. Industry giant BYD slashed prices on some of its models by almost a third. And some car makers have started taking out insurance policies on cars not yet sold and not yet on the roads to hit sales targets. Beijing has said it will be taking action to clamp down on what it calls irrational competition. The government is concerned that falling car prices will worsen the country's deflation, eventually leading to job losses. But it may already be too late to go into reverse, as analysts predict a period of consolidation.
This is less about overcapacity and more about a brutal reshuffling of who gets to survive.
Despite bumps in the road, China is on track to phase out combustion engine vehicles within the next 10 years. And the push for EVs has hugely improved the air quality in major Chinese cities. While an influx of Chinese EVs that undercut European firms is bad news for European automakers, in the long term, it could be good news for the planet. Camille Nedelec, Arabiya, Hong Kong.
Let's take a look at some of the top business news from today. Saudi Arabia is set to sign a $4 billion trade deal with Syria during the Saudi-Syria Investment Forum. Saudi Arabia and Qatar have paid off Syria's $15.5 million debt to the World Bank. As part of strengthening ties, the Saudi embassy in Damascus has announced the introduction of special travel permits for investors to facilitate trade. Japan has made a trade deal with Washington, which will cut tariffs on the car sector to 15%. This is going to be in exchange for $550 billion of Japanese investment in the United States. In reaction, the Japanese markets hit a one-year high with a surge in the price of automaker shares. Japan is the US fifth largest importer, shipping a whopping $148 billion of goods last year. Turning to sport now, Qatar has confirmed its interest in hosting the 2036 Olympic and Paralympic Games. A successful bid would make Qatar the first country in the Middle East to host the Olympics. The Gulf nation, which hosted the Men's Football World Cup in 2022, is bidding against Indonesia, Turkey, India and Chile. And finally, Canadian Summer McIntosh has become the first swimmer to set the world record in 3 different individual events since Michael Phelps at the 2008 Beijing Olympics. McIntosh won 3 gold medals at the Paris Olympics last year and then broke 3 world records at the Canadian trials in June. Two North Korean defectors are making a bid for stardom. It launched on debut, the album, on Friday. The K-pop band is the latest product of South Korea's pop idol industry that has created multiple cultural juggernauts, such as BTS. The group's music reflects the members' own stories, and the album's title song explores what it's like when the price of freedom is family. Camille Nedelec has more on this story.
This isn't just another K-pop song. This is the story of North Korean defectors now trying to become stars. The song Shattered is the title song of the band's album. It tells the story of Hak, who escaped the country as a child, but he was forced to leave his father behind, and they were never reunited.
Shattered captures the feeling of my life breaking apart. I'm sharing this story for the first time. I wrote it, drawing on the emotions when I heard my father passed away.
Now in his early 20s, Hak is one of 5 band members hoping to conquer South Korea's multi-billion-dollar pop idol industry, which created global sensations such as BTS and Blackpink. Fame and fortune now a hair's breadth away, a far cry from Hak's childhood in North Korea, in which violence and hunger were commonplace.
After I was caught stealing, I was beaten hard until I was bleeding. I've been through a lot. I've eaten spoiled rice. That's just one example of the hardships.
His fellow bandmate Suk is also from North Korea. Escaping the restrictive country also means escaping everyone you've ever known. And he hopes that if he becomes famous, those he left behind will find out.
I think it would be nice for my friends or people who know me to see me on stage.
He was first inspired by K-pop when a friend in North Korea showed him Gangnam Style. He says it blew him away. It's that kind of cultural influence and the type of music he makes now that North Korean authorities want to clamp down on. In North Korea, teenagers have been sentenced to hard labour for watching K-pop videos. But the group's message is one of hope.
You know, who doesn't love the story of someone from a humble background chasing their dreams? And especially K-pop, it's very flashy.
The other band members are from the United States and Japan. They say their blend of different cultures is part of their USP.
하나, 둘, 셋. 안녕하세요. 뷰티걸스입니다.
Camille Nedilek, Al Arabiya.
Russia and Ukraine are set to resume direct peace talks in Istanbul for the first time in over 7 weeks. But hopes remain low, with the Kremlin warning that the negotiations will be difficult. Meanwhile, protests have erupted across Ukraine after President Zelensky signed a controversial law weakening anti-corruption bodies, a move which is raising alarms amongst Western allies. For more on this story, we're joined by Ukrainian MP Alexi Goncharenko. Alexi, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, now, you've consistently called out Russian aggression. What does Kiev realistically hope to achieve from these new talks in Istanbul, especially after weeks of silence from Russia and what seems like stalled progress towards some sort of a peace deal?
Yeah, you know, I'm quite skeptical about possible results of these peace talks. The best we can really wait for is exchange of prisoners of war, which is very important because for Ukraine, we want to take all our heroes back home. But I don't believe that there will be any breakthrough. Unfortunately, Putin wants to continue the war, and for the moment he doesn't want to stop. And the only way how he can be made to stop is if he will be punched hard, first of all, by United States. We heard President Trump recently who said that he gave Russia 50 days. And I hope that he will continue this line of really strong and harsh tone with Russia that can really help. But again, I don't believe something will happen now. Probably we need to wait these 50 days, and then United States will need to put a really serious sanctions, including secondary sanctions against countries buying Russian oil. And only after this, I think we can have a real possibility to have Russia at the negotiation table with not imitating, but having real negotiations.
Alexi, we'll come back to that 50-day deadline and ultimatum as well, but the downing of Ukraine's first French Mirage jet, there's been growing pressure on air defence recently, in recent days in Kiev. How is Kiev balancing the demands of a, at this stage, very grinding war with the urgent matter of diplomacy?
First of all, Ukraine wants ceasefire right now. And from March of this year, we propose to stop the war now unconditionally, and that Russia doesn't want. Speaking about Mirage, it's not good for us, but nothing, you know, we lost one fighter jet. Again, it's not really good, but it's nothing so serious that it can change anything. We're speaking just about one piece of military equipment.
The announcement from President Zelensky on the anti-corruption law, there has been protests. We've seen the videos from those. There's been concerns from Ukraine's Western allies about this. Is there a potential risk that it would damage Ukraine's EU ambition, which is still on the table? The international trust that it's built over the past decade might hang from this now. What do you think?
Yeah, unfortunately, President Zelensky is becoming more and more autocratic, and he is building some autocratic system. And this is one step towards this, in this direction, which is very bad. I voted against this law. I hope that it will be changed. There is now a lot of pressure from inside Ukraine. Ukrainian society is very angry with this because we want to have to see a real fight against corruption, not a fight against anti-corruptional bodies. Also, we see pressure from outside, from our European partners. I hope American partners will join this pressure too. And President Zelensky should be explained that it's something unacceptable. And for Ukraine to be democracy, it's a part of our resilience. Small democracy can win over big autocracy. Small autocracy will be swallowed by big autocracy sooner or later.
Alexi, President Zelensky saying he aims to root out Russian influence, and now we're seeing the centralised control over Nabu and SAP. Is that really worth what's going to be some potential backlash from the allies who've helped build those institutions?
No, President Zelensky tries to protect himself and his entourage against any anti-corruptional investigations. That's what he really wants. All these talkings about Russian things, it's not about Russia. It's about internal things. President Zelensky is doing good job abroad, but he is doing poor job inside the country. That is the reality, which many knows. We don't speak much about this before, but unfortunately, because of his last moves, we need to speak about this, and we need to stop this slide into autocracy, which is happening in Ukraine now.
We're 3.5 years into the fighting, over 3.5 years at this stage. What is the feeling from people who are on the ground in Ukraine? Are they weary? Are they growing tired of the endless fighting? What is the general day-to-day life feeling like for them right now?
We are exhausted, we are tired, but we know what we are fighting for. We know that if Russia will win, they will make genocide of Ukrainians, as they did before, and they will kill us, they will take our children to attack next countries. We will never allow this to happen. Also, we need to protect the country from inside, from corruption, from autocracy. We need to defend democracy. It's a big task for Ukrainian people, but Ukrainian people already proved to the world that we are capable of very hard tasks.
What if a deal isn't reached in the 50-day timeline that's been set out by President Trump? Are you concerned that we might see a growing escalation?
What growing escalation? We have a full-scale war. Russia escalated already to maximum they can, except nuclear weapons, but it will be a red line for even for their allies, China, India, and India, not their ally, but the country which helps them economically to survive. So I think these countries will stop any relationships with Russia if they will go nukes. Everything else Russia already is using against Ukraine. We're not afraid of escalation, but we want peace as soon as possible.
If the talks in Istanbul collapse once again, which we hope they won't, will there be any pressure, do you think, from Europe, or is there hope from the Ukrainian side that there'll be pressure from Europe and the US once again in Moscow ahead of the 50 days?
That's exactly, again, nothing will happen in Istanbul as a breakthrough. So now Europe and the United States should prepare for next moves. They should punch Putin really hard, and only after this he will go to negotiations. Putin is a kind of person, and Russia is a kind of country which understands only one language, a language of force.
Alexi, it is a time of heavy fighting, fragile talks that we've discussed at length, and growing domestic discontent as well. What would be your message to Ukraine's Western partners who are likely watching this situation unfold very closely?
The message is very clear. Russian aggression against Ukraine is not just against Ukraine, but against the whole civilized world, against democracy, rule of law, and everything we value, and human rights. And also it is important to help Ukraine to defend democracy inside, because that is very important. And martial law for many years is definitely not the best time for democracy to flourish. So it is a complex challenge, but it is absolutely possible to tackle. And I believe that together with our partners, we will do this.
What about the EU and the joining of Ukraine, which is now seems like it is very far away, but realistically that will still be on the table once some sort of a ceasefire and peace deal has been reached. Is there hopes from Ukrainians that that is still not too far away or within reach?
15 years ago, we were told that we will never be part of European Union. Then it was Euromaidan, the Revolution of Dignity. People proved they want to be part of Europe. Ukraine proved. Now we're candidate to European Union. And now we hear again that, oh, maybe it will take too much time. I believe it can be quite quickly. But for this, we should work together with our partners. And all will benefit from this. Both Ukraine and our partners will benefit from Ukraine being a part of European Union.
Alexi, thank you so much for joining us. That is Alexi Goncharenko, Ukrainian MP. Thank you so much. For more on this, we're now joined from Moscow by Dmitri Bridzy, who is a political analyst and researcher on Russian political affairs. Dmitry, thank you for joining us on W News. Why has Russia chosen to come back to the negotiating table now? It's been 7 weeks of silence. What's prompted this renewed engagement that we're seeing?
Hello, good evening. Thank you very much for allowing me to be in this program. So I think it's obvious that the Kremlin is looking at these negotiations as opportunity to make a ceasefire. Of course, there were requests from the President Vladimir Putin to Ukrainian side about the territories that Russia take in 2022, but of course negotiations in Russia, it's still the Russian government looks at it as opportunity, especially during the administration of the president of USA, Donald Trump. And of course, the negotiations won't be easy for both sides, for Russian side and for Ukrainian side, because Russia is asking for Ukraine to change its position toward the territories of Kharkov, Zaporozhye, Kherson, Donetsk, Lugansk, and also, of course, of Crimea, and to recognize it as a part of Russian Federation, and to also not only from Ukrainian side but from the international community, and also to not have any military base that belongs to NATO on Ukrainian lands. So of course this request started from the beginning of what called in Russia a special military operation, but Ukrainian sees it as capitulation and not as opportunity and to make the ceasefire.
Dmitry, sources close to the Kremlin are saying that Putin won't budge unless the West engages in Russia's terms. You've spoken just now about Ukraine's terms, but what are the terms that Russia has for the West? And have they shifted at all? Because Russia has gained ground in Ukraine, as we know. Has he changed those terms?
I don't think so. From 2022, from the beginning of what called the special military operation, Kremlin didn't change its policies towards Ukraine. It's still the same policies, and even the sanctions that were implemented on Russia didn't change the mind of the Russian President Vladimir Putin towards Ukraine. Of course, the special operation or war on Ukraine is making huge problem for Russian economy. We're talking about sanctions. We're talking about that, for example, big corporations like Gazprom had lost thousands of US dollars, and also the Russian economy totally changed beginning from 2022 towards having a better relationship with Asian countries, with Arab countries, towards working more on BRICS as alternative, let's say, platform for cooperation. But Russia is still didn't change its mind. So we're talking about the same position, the same policies toward Ukraine. Ukraine should be not a land that could harm Russia, could make any, let's say, dangerous movements or toward Russia, and the same request about political changes in Ukraine, that in Ukraine should be presidential elections and also elections in the Ukrainian parliament in order to have ceasefire and have negotiations to be successful.
Dmitry, before I let you go on this, Ukraine lost its first French Mirage fighter jet, which we've heard. The forces are stretched a little thin. Alexi, who I just spoke to, said it's just one fighter jet. Does Moscow see this loss of a fighter jet as some sort of a window for military gains? Or is diplomacy still the priority here?
I think both diplomacy and the battlefield, because if you're talking about the opinion of Russian government bodies, they are saying that the only solution in the Ukrainian crisis is winning on battlefield or in Donbass, Lugansk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson. And but also there are other part of the Russian government, let's say, they are saying about negotiations, that the end of this crisis is negotiations and peace deal. But of course, Russia, and especially Kremlin, they are using both a battlefield and diplomacy in order to make Ukraine change its mind toward Russia and change its policies, because from beginning from 2014, Russia changed policies toward Ukraine because of Donbass, the situation of Russian ethnic groups that live on Donbass territories, and because of Ukrainian policies toward Russian ethnic groups in Donbass territory and east part of Ukraine.
Dmitri Bridzy in Moscow, thank you so much for joining us on W News. More than 100 aid agencies are warning that mass starvation is spreading across Gaza, accusing Israel of blocking access to food and essential supplies. The United Nations says its workers are being shot at when trying to distribute aid. That's despite Israeli claims that hundreds of trucks are waiting to be picked up. Gaza's health ministry says dozens have died of malnutrition in just 48 hours, as humanitarian groups demand a full ceasefire and access to the trapped supplies. To discuss this in more detail, we're joined from Gaza by Amjad Shawa, who is the director of the Palestinian Non-Governmental Organization. Amjad, thank you for talking to us. More than 100 aid organizations, including yours, have now issued this very stark warning about the mass starvation and humanitarian crisis in Gaza. What message are you hoping that this collective statement sends to the international community?
Thank you. The main message that the situation in Gaza became extremely critical on the lives of the Palestinians in general. It became collective starvation in Gaza, whatever the age and sex, and all under such starvation and famine status. That also considering that babies, about 55,000 infants in risk of death if there will be no immediate entry of aid to Gaza. And the same time that we have pregnant women, we have elders, we have people with disability, we have also the youth. Today, there is tens of youth who are just fall down because that they didn't eat for days, and the only food that they received, it's salt with water. This is the things that we are eating. It's 160 days of tight blockade on Gaza, no entry of the basic food items, while Israel continue its killing by the airstrikes to different areas and suffocating the Palestinians by the forceful displacement and all over Gaza. Strip Gaza became only 12% of its distance. It's up 2.2 million Palestinians now living or staying or displaced in space less than 50 kilometers, which means 45,000 people over 1 kilometer in such a critical status. No food, no water. All the Gazans are suffering from severe water insecurity.
Amjad,
share of water, yes.
I want to just ask, because the PNGO are obviously on the ground, and we're hearing now that humanitarians themselves are joining the food lines to feed their children. What is a day in the life like for PNGO staff at the moment on the ground in Gaza?
You know, today one of my staff, he couldn't stand up because for a few days he couldn't just part of meal, which is some rice he managed to get, and the others couldn't manage to get, you know, pieces of bread to have for them, for their children. Now who supposed to support the people, now we cannot support ourselves and to get aid for ourselves. This is very critical, really, that also the high frustration that we are passing through, that we cannot do more and help the others, the people who are in bad need for our help, whether by food, water, or hygiene, or by the issue of shelter, which is very important. Just a few minutes while I'm waiting for you, there was a phone call from someone who is asking for a tent. He was displaced, and he and his wife and his children just in the road. There is nothing to manage to give these families, while Israel is blocking the entry of 130,000 tons of aid supplies, which is waiting in the crossings, and part of it was damaged. For a few months, it was waiting there. So the call now is to stop this war, and in the same time to have a permanent ceasefire, to open the crossings, to protect the civilians. This is ABC on the international law. This is the basic thing that we are asking for.
Amjad, we're seeing the footage as well of that food and the very crucial supplies stacked just outside of the crossing. People are dying from hunger hundreds of meters away from where this food is resting at the moment. From your perspective, you're on the ground. What is stopping the aid getting through? Why is it not being distributed?
The Israeli decision not to let in this aid. This is the basic what's happened from the day one of this war, about 22 months of engineering the starvation in Gaza Strip, the denial of the entry of the basic needs, and just to have these drops of the ocean and to mislead the world that we are entering the aid, but the international organizations are not getting them. Now it's blocked in the border, and they just enter few trucks, and these trucks is not reaching the distribution point. It's just a stop in the roads by the Israeli order, and there was kind of control by the people, as you can see in the and watch that the people are just stop and take by their hands, and who is the powerest and strongest can take. There is women, children, elders, patients, people with disability cannot go and get these supplies, which is very limited amount of supplies, or otherwise you are obliged to go to these traps, which is orchestrated by the GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian, so-called GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is a killing tool for the Palestinians. So you have to sacrifice your life in order to be back to their children with some food that you can feed them for a few days. This is the case in Gaza. Aid is used as kind of military weapon by the Israeli occupation forces.
Amjad, I think up until earlier this week, we'd heard from Israeli forces saying that Hamas are commandeering the majority of the aid that is making it through, the little bit of aid that is coming through. Now we're hearing from the WHO, now 100 agencies, including your own at the PNGO, have said it's not necessarily the case. We need more aid. We need a flood of aid coming through. Are you hopeful that now the international community will sit up and pay attention and actually listen to what's taking place in Gaza and send through that all-important aid as quickly as possible by putting pressure on Israel to allow it in?
It's a very important question. Thank you, really. From day one of this war, and we are calling on the international community in order to act. The international community failed us as Palestinians, failed our children. We have 60,000 people killed, 150,000 injured. We have the destruction of Gaza, about 90% of Gaza destroyed. And now we are in very critical condition regarding our children. When I'm talking about malnutrition, it will affect all the new generation, all the children, the infants, that they will be affected by this malnutrition and their health and their growth. So yes, we hope that these calls, what the international community is issuing from state positions, but I hope that to see kind of actions, not only statements and positions. Israel will not listen. They criticize the 27 countries who issued the statement regarding calling for opening the crossings. And now there is more advanced positions from the international community. But while the US is backing Israel and supporting Israel in all levels, with the legal, with weapons, with the political. So these children, these Palestinians, who are in bad need now for these actions as soon as possible. Every day we are losing more lives. Otherwise, we will, this kind of genocide will continue and we will lose more and more lives.
Amjad, Shawa, my thoughts are with you and your colleagues at the PNGO. Thank you for joining us on W News. A spokesman for Barack Obama has called President Trump's accusations of treason a weak attempt at distraction. It comes after Trump made remarks against former President Barack Obama over Russia and the 2016 election after his intelligence chief alleged that Barack Obama and his national security team committed a treasonous conspiracy in a report that was released last week. It's something that the Democrats has said is false, and Trump's comments came following questions from reporters about the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. To discuss this in more details, because obviously there's been the Republican renaming as well of Kennedy Space Station, we are joined by Matthew live on Zoom right now. Matthew, thank you so much for speaking to us. Matthew, why do you think Trump is staying quiet on the Epstein documents? Obviously, he's flooding the news cycle with everything right now, from MLK files to football stadium threats as well. A distraction? Or is this actually a strategy that he's putting into place here?
Well, it's both. Yeah, the distraction is the strategy, right? He is really caught in a bind because during the last election campaign, his team, his current director of the FBI, current deputy director of the FBI, and many others all said that there was a conspiracy to hide the offenders and those who had allegedly abused underage women in conjunction with Jeffrey Epstein. And they demanded during the Biden administration that all of those documents be released. Now, suddenly, when in office, President Trump and his Justice Department have said, oh, we looked into it, and really there's nothing here to be released. There's no new information. So now that has put Trump in a very difficult position with his base, the Make America Great Again or MAGA movement base, which is filled with some genuine conservatives who are appalled by these allegations of abuse of underage women and demand on moral grounds that all the documentation be released. But it seems maybe President Trump is trying to protect influential and powerful people whose names would appear in that documentation. And so he's being accused of claiming he's going to drain the swamp in Washington, but is in fact still filling that swamp.
Matthew, as your experience as a retired US ambassador, you'll be looking on at this and President Trump saying that Obama's presidency was a year-long coup that was based on a report from a file that he's seen. You've been in Washington, you know all about this. How dangerous is this kind of language used in politics?
Yeah, I actually served in the White House under Republican President George W. Bush for 4 years. So yeah, I saw this kind of stuff. And that sort of language is potentially devastating to American democratic institutions. I mean, there's no immediate threat that American democracy is going to collapse, but there's this drip, drip, drip of President Trump undermining the basic institutions of democracy. Calling his predecessor the head of a treasonous conspiracy is very serious undermining of the institution of the president. Treason is a crime that's punishable by death.
Yeah.
And in this case, there's no evidence thereof. So this is very damaging to the strength and the reputation of U.S. democratic institutions over the medium term.
No statute of limitation on a treason charge, though, as well, which is why I think this has been brandished around. The FBI's release of the MLK surveillance files. Now, that is against Martin Luther King's family's wishes to do so. Is this transparency, or is it perhaps another play to shift the public focus away from Epstein? Is it just anything but Epstein right now?
It really is anything but Epstein. And so yes is the answer to your question, especially given that the King family didn't want these documents released. And why release them now? You could have had more time to speak with the family and negotiate what would be released and make them happy. President Trump has done a whole series of additional things to kind of muddy the waters. So he released on Truth Social some posts with at least four images or videos of people riding jet skis and bicycles and all kinds of random stuff that is not only unpresidential, it has nothing to do with the primary key issues of the day. So yeah, President Trump is trying to buy time. There's a recess that was scheduled to happen in a couple of days in Washington of Congress. The Speaker of the House has now moved up that recess to today to begin, so that there can't be any votes in the Congress. And even Trump's most conservative Republican supporters, some of them, are demanding that there be a vote in the Congress to compel their own party's Department of Justice to release documentation. So President Trump is trying to buy time. His Speaker of the House, even though the Speaker of the House demanded that all documents be released a couple of weeks ago, now the Speaker is caving into Trump's pressure and buying more time, hoping that when Congress returns in 5 weeks in September, that this issue will have blown over.
He hopes, the administration hopes. Matthew Bryza, who is with us live from Istanbul, retired US ambassador, thank you so much for joining us on W News. Now, a reminder of our top stories today. More than 100 aid groups say mass starvation is spreading in Gaza. It accuses Israel of blocking access to critical food and supplies. Russia and Ukraine head to Istanbul for their first peace talks in weeks amid new battlefield losses and growing Western concerns over Kiev's anti-corruption rollback. And Obama calls Trump's treason claims a weak attempt at distraction from the Epstein files backlash. That's all from us on W News. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on X. The Dressing Room is coming next, and we'll be back in just a couple of hours with W News Extra. But for now, goodbye.